Okay, welcome everyone to our May Shotsuki Monthly Memorial and Adult Dharma service. I would like to begin by reading the May Shotsuki list. Hideo Ajari, Eki Akahoshi, Tsune Akatani, Helen Aochi, Kenji Aochi, Fumiko Arimoto, Ada Baba, Hiroko Baba, Douglas Barut Davis, Takeshi Endo, Kikuzo Endo, Roy Endo, Wesley Endo, Heisaku Fuji, Ikutaro Fuji, Kimino Fuji, Toshie Fuji, Tsue Fuji, Yuki Fuji, Kenzo Fujimori, Dorothy Fujimori, Dorothy Fujino, Frank Fujino, Elnora Sonoe Fukuya, Nui Furuta, Soemon Furuta, William Galeota Jr., Masumi Hamamoto, Rose Tomeko Hamasaki, Rokutaro Hanamoto, Kenji Harada, Kuno Hatakeyama, Yasu Hayashida, Daikichi Hazama, Tamotsu Hemmi, Kihachi Hirabayashi, Florence Nita Hiramoto, Terry Hiramoto, Nasuko Hirasawa, Kyushiro Hori, Minoru Horiuchi, Io Ide, Masami Isono, Yasu Isono, Hatsue Iwata, Yasu Kanagaki, Frank Mikio Kaneko, Setsuko Kaneko, Aisaku Kasai, Nobue Kawabata, Tamiko Kawabe, Marvin Kawamoto, Zennoku Kei Unji, Matsue Kimura, Sei Kimura, Tsuna Kinoshita, Iwao Kishi, Kichinosuke Kobata, George Koizumi, Teruko Komure, Tamejiro Kono, Tsudae Makita, Yoshiyuki Maruyama, Sachiko Matsui, Koito Matsumoto, Kosuzu Matsumoto, Matsuno Matsumoto, Takinojo Matsumoto, Gitaro Matsutani, Hatsuko Matsutani, Jun Matsutani, Misao Matsutani, Ito Misaki, Eiichi Mitani, Marian Miyamoto, Emiko Miyamura, Komume Mizusaki, Iso Mori, Jotaro Mori, Kinue Mori, Hiroshi Morimoto, Yoshi Morimoto, Minako Morita, Takeshi Nakagawa, Ruby Ruriko Nakano, Mary Nakashima, Yoi Nakashima, Miyoko Nakatani, Tatsuno Nakaya, Baby Narasaki, Kimino Narasaki, Hideso Neishi, Yone Neishi, Ayako Nishiori, Tai Ochikubo, Infant Tatsuko Oka, Tetsuo Okai, Chie Okano, Hide Okano, Kikujiro Okano, Hikotaro Okano, Tsunetaro Okawachi, Kazue Ota, Masako Ota, Yasuo Otani, Dana Oto, Asano Otsuka, Rui Otsuka, Toyoshichi Otsuka, Taiko Robinson, Otojuro Sakai, James Sakamoto, Jin Sakumoto, Kishi Sasajima, Natsuyo Sasaki, Yoichi Sato, Robert Shigemoto, Shosuke Shintaku, Umeji Shintaku, Tadao Sumimoto, Mitsuko Tachiki, Mary Takagaki, Shizuo Takata, Masao Takeda, Yuriko Takesaka, Kumeo Tamori, Robert Tanaka, Yukino Tanaka, Nao Tani, Kazue Tanizawa, Reverend Koju Terada, Jinsuke Toji, Kumi Toriyama, Suma Tsuchida, Eimatsu Tsuchida, Daryl Tsujimoto, Kusuo Tsujimoto, Chikao Tsukimura, Eiko Tsukimura, Tokusuke Tsukimura, James Uchiyama, Tei Ugai, Brian Umeki, Hisano Umemoto, Sugae Umemoto, Sachi Uratsu, Moshichi Urushibata, Moto Urushibata, Sato Urushibata, Helen Ushijima, Jack Wang, Yoshio Yamabe, Harold Yamamoto, Michisuke Yamamoto, Naono Yamamoto, Yutaka Jim Yamamoto, Shotaro Yasuda, Hatsumi Yokomizo, Issei Yokomizo, Motohachi Yokomizo, George Yokoyama, Mariko Mali Yoneyama, Yoemon Yoshida, Yoshiko Yoshida, Jun Yoshioka, Sato Yoshioka, Ras Yoshisato. Okay, next we'll chant Sanbutsuge, and it's on page 22 in the small book and page 79 in the large purple book. And you can chant along or think about your loved ones being honored during the chanting. Text only. Okay. Namandam, 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 namandam. Kogen gigi ijin mugok nyoze enmyo muyo tosha nichigatsumani shuko enyo Kai shitsu onpei yunyaku jumok nyorai yogen chose murin shogaku daion koru jippo Kaimon Shojin Sanmai Chie Itoku Muryo Shushoke Jintai Zennen Shobutsu Hokai Gujin no Kugo Gaitai Mumyo Yokunu Sesonyomu Nino Shishi Jin Tokumuryo Kukun Kodai Chie Jinmyo Komyo Iso Shindo Daisen Ganga Sabuts Zai Shoho Kado Shoji Mifugedatsu Fusejoi Kainin Shojin Nyoze Sanmai Chie Ijo Gosei Tokubutsu Fugyo Shigan Isai Kuku Isadayan Keshi Ubutsu Yakusen Okuman Muryo Daisho Shunyo Goja Kuyo Isai Shito Shobutsu Funyo Gudo Ken shō fu kyak hin yo go ja shō butsu sekai bu fu kake mushu setsu do komyo shisho hen shisho kok nyoze shojin ijin nanyo ryoga sabutsu kokudo daiichi goshu kimyo dojo chozetsu kokunyo nayon nimu toso gato aimin dodatsu isai jipponai sho shinetsu shoujo ito ga kok keraku annon kobutsu shinmyo ze ga shinsho hotsuga no hi riki shoshoyo jippo seson chiemuge jonyo shison chiga shingyo keryo shinshi shoku dokuchu gagyo shojin ninju fuke namandabu 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 ganni shikudoku byodo seisai dohoten bodaishin ojo an dakok. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Namanda. Next, why don't we recite the three treasures, and it's on page 3 in the small purple book. The three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma, now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope is there that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of your way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves your supreme will. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord, in your life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Okay. Well, I'd like to now deliver the Dharma message, and a term came up. So I teach a class at Institute of Buddhist Studies each semester, and I've been teaching for a long time, like since 2008, 18, 19, 21, 23, so over 15 years, but I keep learning. I learn all the time. I think teaching is the best way to learn, right? When you're just a student, you absorb as much as you can and do the best you can on the test or whatever, and then you're done. When you have to teach it, you really have to know it, right? And you can't just get by passing the test. You have to really know the material. And so the first time I taught my classes, it was like, wow, I still have so much to learn. But then every year, every semester, I learn something new. And it's usually in the interaction between myself and the students, right? The material is important, but it's having all these different eyes on it, right? Different experiences and encountering these teachings, right? And so I benefit from that. And I try not to be too stubborn in my own understanding, though I'm sure that happens, right? But also be open to other viewpoints. And sometimes they'll pick up on a word or something that I just breeze by, right? And so that's one thing I'd like to share with you. A student asked on page 58, what does Karmic Nexus mean? Not Lexus, Nexus, right? Karmic Nexus. Nexus. It's spelled the same as Lexus, but with a N instead of an L, right? And so I'm not sure, right? But fortunately, that book had the kanji and the pronunciation after in parenthesis. So Karmic Nexus is how this scholar was translating innen. Innen. Okay? In means cause. En is conditions. Okay? So probably if I saw innen, I would translate it as karmic causes and conditions. Right? Causes and conditions. And I think many of you have heard that term. Right? We're here due to innumerable, inconceivable causes and conditions. And, so we talked about it for a while, and then the student said, yeah, that word nexus is what was tripping me up. And so I thought, yeah, that's not such a good translation. But then I started thinking about it and realized it's still an interesting idea, right? Maybe it's not a good literal translation, but maybe we can think of this idea of a karmic nexus. So the reason I brought this up is I heard of someone who I think is originally from Japan and who is moving back to Japan now later in their life because the only family they have now is in Japan. So they're kind of alone here, right? And the problem is driving, right? And it's hard to live in the United States if you can't drive. Right? There's certain areas maybe where you could, but a lot of, California maybe especially, there's plenty of places with very limited public transportation. So driving is essential, right? And so when I heard that, it made me think of my mother and myself. So I've shared this story recently, but I think it was at a memorial service. I don't think I've shared it at during service, so I apologize if you're hearing it again. But I was born in Tokyo, right? My father's white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, 13 generations or something. My mother was born and raised in Japan. Although she became, just in case ICE wants to come get me, she became an American citizen before I was born, right? So even though I was born in Japan, both my parents were American citizens, right? And so I'm an American citizen. I think I might even be able to be president, right? There's some things about you can't be naturalized and become president, right? Yeah, not that I want to be, or can I be the Pope? And so I was born an American citizen, but born in Japan to a white American father, and I don't know. I don't consider my mom Japanese American, even though that's what she was. She was kind of like Shin Issei, is a term I've heard. People who moved to the U.S. after World War II, Japanese people, right? And so they're first generation because they're the first generation to live here. But they're different than what we normally think of first generation, who immigrated, late 19th, early 20th century, right? So Issei, so that's Issei, first generation. Shin Issei is new first generation, right? So she's kind of Shin Issei. She that's the same level maybe as Shin Issei and like BCA communities, but we were not part of BCA community. I grew up in Massachusetts. No connection to Buddhism whatsoever. So and no connection to JA community either. That's why I don't really resonate with that idea, Shin Issei. I'm kind of Issei, right? I was born in Japan, but moved to the States when I was 1, right? And we actually moved back to Japan when I was 11, right? And then moved back here. So I'm kind of, I wonder, I'm kind of like Kibe, right? Who were like born here but moved to Japan and then came back, but maybe I'm half Kinichi. I returned to Japan, right? I returned to the land of my birth without being able to speak the language, right? So it's interesting, and yet I'm kidding when I say that, right? Because my experience is totally different than the traditional quote-unquote Kibe experience, even though Kibe is kind of a controversial term in some ways too, right? But so that's just part of me is being kind of like y'all. Many of you here, right, who are part of the traditional Japanese American experience, traditional, but that has so many variations too, right? So there's middle way between what many, if not most people went through, and then this opportunity for variation in experience, right? And so maybe that's more where I fit in, is a kind of different experience than like the traditional temple family kind of experience. The funny thing is, my dad, the reason he was in Japan was because he worked for the military. He wasn't in the military, but he was a civilian engineer, and his company was connected to MIT Lincoln Labs and did stuff in Japan, working with the Japanese Air Force, but through the U.S. Air Force. So he had like military equivalent rank, and we got to use the Sanno Hotel and go to the PX at Yokota and Yokosuka and that kind of thing, right? And so he got called to work in Germany around 1976, I think. So I'm 5 or 6 years old, and my mom is been living in the United States for 6 or 7 years, and apparently I didn't remember this until several years ago. He went first. And he was just going to go, and we were going to stay in the U.S. I just remember going to Germany, but apparently we lived, just me and my mom, at home in Massachusetts by ourselves, hoping that with help from friends we'd be able to make it. I don't think it worked, right? And so my best friend at the time, reminded me a few years ago that his family drove us to the airport, just me and my mom, so that we could fly to Germany and meet my dad. Right? And I guess the flight got canceled, so we had to go home and then go back again the next day or something. I have zero memory of this. I don't know if I blanked it out or what. I don't remember. My friend does. Right? And so then I moved to Japan. 6 months we lived there, I think. Right? And then moved back. And everything's fine. Hunky-dory. Right? Actually, it was a karmic nexus of a whole bunch of stuff that had a whole bunch of repercussions, I think, for me anyway, right? But just kind of thinking that part of the karmic nexus was lack of driving ability, lack of a car, right? And that thing had such a profound impact, right? That my mother couldn't survive on her own in Massachusetts at home, right? It just wasn't working out, right? So that we had to go and be with my dad. So that entailed me being homeschooled for at least half a year, if not a year. And that meant when I came back to school, I was ahead of the class. I've told you this story before. I was ahead of the class, but my study skills were in the toilet. My study skills were non-existent because I'd been homeschooled irregularly, not every day. We'd just go with days without doing anything. My mom would be like, honey, time to do homework. Okay. That was easy. And then a couple of weeks later, time for homework. Okay. That was easy, right? But you get back and you have to do it every day. Like a few years later, I was like trying to do my homework at homeroom that morning, and I'm like trying to finish it, and I feel these hands on my shoulders, and the teacher goes, Harry, homework means you do it at home. You're not supposed to be doing it the morning it's due, right? In school. You're supposed to do it at home, right? I forgot, like I say, I forgot a lot of this stuff. Hearing about it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, no wonder I'm like that. Oh, right? Just all these realizations about myself. But then, I'd have to take it a step further, and what was my mom going through? Right? And that's something I rarely consider. Even thinking of this story, I'm thinking about me. What happened to me? What happened to me? Right? But if I think in a different way, what was she going through? Right? What was she going through as a pretty new immigrant with not much Japanese community around her, not much support? We had a couple of family friends. That was it. Right? And so I think for all of us here for Shotsuki, right? You're here in memory of someone, right? And I think maybe that's one thing we can do during Shotsuki, right? Is consider this other perspective. Consider this other person, right? Consider this other person's life, right? And when we do that, it's not just an intellectual exercise, right? I think it's kind of Buddhist because it's reflecting on myself, but myself at a karmic nexus. So what is a nexus? I forgot to define it. I looked it up, like in the few seconds before I started my talk, and I kind of knew. It's a meeting point. So you have all these different lines, and where they meet is a nexus, 2 or more, right? So my life, 1976, sitting in the car with my friend, getting ready to go to Germany, was a nexus, a karmic nexus of all kinds of stuff, right? My father's work, my father himself, his life, my mother, her life, our friends, right? All kinds of stuff. The Air Force, Cold War was part of it. That's why my dad was there, right? This is Cold War time still, right? So all those things, even the Cold War is part of my experience, right? And so for each of us maybe to think, and we're at a nexus now too. Maybe this is the most important nexus, huh? This moment, right? I'm here because of so many others. Who I am today is because of so many others. And even beyond the others, maybe think about Cold War or whatever, right? That is also what's going on in the world, right? And that what's going on in the world is part of who I am at this moment, who each of us is at this moment, right? Unlike the Western view of the individual, a kind of billiard ball that's like separate from everything else, right? The Buddhist view is that, no, we exist in a karmic nexus. Each one of our nexi, is that the plural? Right? Nexuses, right? Right? Each one of us, we are each a nexus, right? And here we are, and maybe there's another big nexus containing all of us, right? But I like to think that's maybe part of our Shotsuki memorial, right? Is to think about our loved ones, think about the relationship that we had, think about the impact they had on us, but also think about them and what their experience was. Right? And if we do that, I think we get a more accurate view of reality. Because if I'm only thinking about myself, I'm not taking into account all these others, right? But if I can think about other people's feelings, other people's experiences, and maybe that changes the way I think about the things that I went through. And so that's part of the awareness part of AKA, right? Awareness. Kindness is another one, right? I think that we can think about them kindly. We can think about ourselves kindly. I used to have a lot of guilt and just guilt about why am I such a bad student? Why did I disappoint my mother so much, right? And learning about what happened to me, and I did block some of it, psychologically just blocked it out, right? Realizing it later and realizing, whoa, it wasn't just my fault, right? That the way I am is partly due to, I mean, I have to take responsibility too, right? But it's not just me, right? That so much of who I am is because of things that happened. And then if we think of the others, think of things that happened, internment, right? And just forgetting or not aware of the impact of that, right? How strong an impact it had. Right? And even if, I know that there's some people that were young in camp, and I hear from them, it was great. It was so much fun. One of them says, I didn't even go to school at all. And you're like, how did you not go to school? But maybe he doesn't remember, but, and yet those people I think were impacted too by how their parents were feeling, right? And how the community was feeling around them. So, on this occasion of this May Shotsuki Monthly Memorial, let us think about our loved ones that we're honoring, right? If we're here for Shotsuki, even if we're not here for a specific person, I think we can take a moment to contemplate, right? Who am I? Realizing who I am is so much due to the efforts of others. So why don't we conclude the Dharma talk with Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. So I realized since I talked about driving in my talk, maybe I can call it the Karmic Lexus and then cross out Lexus and put Nexus. No, I'm just kidding. Why don't we sing a Gatha? Let's sing Ondokusan II. I think it's on page 220 in the big purple book. And if you have the small book, it's on page 76. And this is a poem by Shinran Shonin expressing a deep, deep sense of gratitude to his teachers and loved ones. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Okay, unless there are any special announcements, a lot coming up this May with the last week is cemetery visits, and so the cemetery visit, Memorial Day weekend should be, the schedule is in the Bushin, and we'll send it out before that weekend, and Bazaar coming up in June, so keep an eye on your email. Thank you very much. Let's conclude our service. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Okay, and you can come up and offer incense if you haven't had a chance to do so already.